Subscribe to Iron Age Instincts right now, because what you're about to hear challenges almost everything modern people think they know about hygiene, disease, and survival. If Vikings lived the way movies show them, half-naked, ankle-deep in filth, surrounded by animals, rotting food, and smoke-filled halls, they should have been chronically sick. They weren't. Archaeology, skeletal analysis, and ancient texts all point to a population that was surprisingly robust, long-lived for their time, and physically resilient. That mystery is still not fully explained, and once you understand why, it changes how you think about health, environment, and human adaptation. Why modern assumptions about cleanliness completely fail when applied to Viking life. When we hear disgusting conditions, we are projecting modern fears backward. Vikings lived with animals, stored food without refrigeration, reused water, and had no concept of germ theory. Yet skeletal remains show relatively low rates of infectious bone disease, strong immune response indicators, and fewer signs of chronic illness than expected. Scientists struggle with this because by modern standards, these conditions should have produced epidemics. The key mistake is assuming cleanliness equals health. Viking environments were dirty by modern definitions, but they were biologically stable. Their filth was familiar to their immune systems, not a constant influx of novel pathogens. How constant exposure trained Viking immune systems instead of overwhelming them. From infancy, Viking children were exposed to microbes through soil, animals, smoke, fermented foods, and untreated water. This constant low-level exposure likely trained their immune systems aggressively early in life. Modern immunology calls this immune calibration, where early exposure reduces overreaction later. Vikings were not sheltered from bacteria, so their immune systems learned to respond efficiently instead of panicking. A practical takeaway here is that over-sanitization can weaken immune resilience. Controlled exposure to natural environments, soil, animals, and outdoor living strengthens immune response, something survivalists and homesteaders already intuitively practice today. Why smoke-filled longhouses may have reduced disease spread. Longhouses were dark, smoky, and poorly ventilated by modern standards. However, wood smoke contains antimicrobial compounds that inhibit airborne bacteria and mold growth. Constant low-level smoke exposure may have reduced pathogens inside enclosed spaces, acting as a primitive disinfectant. While smoke isn't healthy in excess, moderate exposure in a pre-industrial setting may have prevented worse outcomes. You can apply this insight by understanding why traditional food smoking preserves meat so effectively and why smoke-curing shelters and tools was common across ancient cultures. So, let's talk about how fermented food quietly protected Viking guts and immunity. Viking diets were, absolutely packed with fermented products like sour whey, skyr, fermented fish, pickled vegetables, and of course, ale. The process of fermentation introduces beneficial bacteria that improve digestion, nutrient absorption, and immune regulation. A healthy gut microbiome dramatically reduces susceptibility to disease. Now, scientists still struggle to model ancient gut ecosystems, but evidence suggests the Vikings managed to maintain resilient microbiomes, even in those harsh conditions. You can actually apply this today by incorporating fermented foods into your diet consistently, not just as a supplement trend, but really as a daily survival strategy for your gut health. Why didn't parasites destroy Viking populations the way you might expect? Well, yes, the Vikings had parasites. There's no doubt about that. Evidence from latrines absolutely confirms it. Yet, interestingly, parasite loads appear moderate rather than catastrophic. It turns out exposure to parasites may have regulated immune responses, preventing autoimmune disorders and chronic inflammation. Modern medicine tends to see parasites as purely harmful, but controlled exposure can actually reduce immune overreaction. Now, this doesn't mean you should go out seeking parasites, but it does explain why overly sterile environments may contribute to modern immune dysfunction. Understanding this, honestly, helps survivalists balance hygiene with immune robustness, rather than trying to eliminate all exposure. Let's consider how extreme physical labour acted as medicine, not punishment. Vikings were, quite simply, constantly active. Farming, sailing, rowing, smithing, herding and hunting. These activities kept their bodies metabolically strong. Chronic movement regulates blood sugar, improves circulation, strengthens bones, and enhances immune surveillance. Skeletal remains actually show strong muscle attachment points and, interestingly, relatively low obesity-related degeneration. Physical labour wasn't optional for them, it was just life. You can really apply this directly by structuring daily movement into your routine rather than relying on artificial exercise windows. Survival fitness, in the end, is all about sustained functional activity, not just bursts of intensity. Why did Viking social structure reduce stress-related disease? Well, strong kinship networks, communal living, shared labour, and clear social roles all work together to reduce chronic psychological stress. You see, stress suppresses immune function, and that's something modern society really struggles with quite deeply, actually. Viking life was certainly dangerous, but it was also psychologically predictable. Everyone knew their role, plain and simple. That kind of stability likely protected their long-term health. Modern survivalists can learn from this by, prioritizing community, shared responsibility, and having a clear purpose rather than just isolating themselves. Why is it that scientists still can't fully explain Viking health? The main issue is, data gaps. Soft tissue just doesn't survive the centuries. Microbiomes, they don't fossilize at all. And the way lifestyle factors interact is honestly quite difficult to model. Viking health wasn't about one single factor, it was a whole system environment, diet, movement, exposure and culture all working together. Modern science tends to isolate variables, but Viking life, on the other hand, really integrated them. So, what does all this mean for modern survivalists and historians? Well, health isn't about eliminating every bit of discomfort or dirt. It's really about adaptation. Vikings didn't survive despite their environment. They survived because they adapted to it completely. If you want to apply this knowledge, it means embracing controlled exposure, physical labour, fermented food, community and environmental resilience, instead of just chasing after sterile comfort. If this deep dive gave you something new to think about, go ahead and subscribe to Iron Age Instincts. Share this with someone who still thinks history is simple and, stay sharp.